I'll never forget the day Emily walked into class with that sketchbook tucked under her arm. She was a 15-year-old girl, always quiet, always keeping to herself. Rarely did she speak unless it was necessary, and she didn't particularly stand out in the class except for her constant dedication to her work. On that day, though, something about her was different. Her usual reserved expression was replaced with something brighter, something eager. It was as if a spark had been ignited in her eyes, a quiet excitement that seemed almost out of place for someone who usually faded into the background. As I looked up from my desk, I noticed the way she walked a little faster than usual, her head held just a bit higher. I could feel the energy in the room shift with her. It was subtle, but it was there. I thought, maybe she had finished something she was particularly proud of. A drawing, perhaps. It seemed like she had been working hard on her art lately, always sketching away in the corner during free time, her face hidden behind her long hair. When the bell rang and class ended, she approached my desk with that sketchbook, holding it carefully like it was something precious. "I finished it, Mr. Stevens," she said, almost whispering, her voice soft and tentative. Her eyes, though, they still held that quiet excitement. I tried to give her a reassuring smile, but honestly, I wasn't expecting much. Emily had never been the strongest artist in the class. She had talent, but it didn't stand out compared to the others. I had seen her work before, nothing extraordinary, at least not by my standards. Still, I nodded. "All right, let's see it." She opened the sketchbook to a page where a pencil drawing of a woman was sketched in soft, delicate lines. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a simple figure. A portrait, really. The woman's features were gentle, a soft curve to her cheeks, an almost ethereal expression on her face. But it was her eyes that really caught my attention. They were big, too big, I thought at first. They didn't match the rest of the face, and yet they somehow drew you in. They weren't realistic, but they were full of emotion. Something deeper than just pencil marks on paper. I tried to mask my initial judgment. The proportions were off, and I couldn't help but see it. I said, trying to sound neutral. "It's okay, but you really need to work on the proportions. The eyes are too big. It looks a bit childish, if I'm being honest." I could feel the room grow quiet as her face dropped ever so slightly. I glanced up and saw the hurt in her eyes, but I didn't acknowledge it. I thought I was helping her. After all, I was just being honest, right? I was just trying to push her to do better. She didn't argue, didn't try to defend her work. Instead, she simply nodded, biting her lip as she closed the book. I thought nothing of it at the time. She wasn't the first student to feel discouraged, and I was sure she would bounce back. But as she walked away, head slightly lowered, I could have sworn I saw something in her eyes. A flicker of pain, maybe even a hint of disappointment. It made me pause for a moment. I pushed the thought away, convincing myself it was nothing. I was just trying to help. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the image of Emily's face from that moment. The way her smile had faltered, the way her shoulders slumped just a little as she walked away. It was a small change, but it stuck with me. She wasn't the same after that. She became quieter than usual. Her presence in class seemed to fade even more. The spark that had been in her eyes that day, when she brought her sketchbook to me, seemed to have dimmed, and with it, something in her seemed to pull back, like she was retreating into herself. I had hoped she would shake it off, but instead, she became more withdrawn. She stopped participating in class discussions as much, stopped showing her sketches to anyone. Even when the other students praised each other's work, Emily sat silently, her head down, not eager to share. I couldn't quite put my finger on why it bothered me so much. Maybe because I had seen this happen before, students losing their spark after one too many criticisms. But this felt different. Emily had always been quiet, but she'd never seemed this defeated. I felt a pang of guilt each time I saw her staring blankly at her desk or avoiding eye contact. I tried to convince myself it was just part of growing up. Some kids took things harder than others, but I couldn't stop thinking about how I had made her feel. I wasn't sure if she had taken my words to heart or if something deeper was going on. But either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had played a part in it. Then one day, as I was going through the morning roll call, I noticed Emily walking into class with an envelope in her hands. It was an official-looking letter with a gold seal, and she was holding it so carefully, like it contained something fragile. My curiosity was piqued. "Good morning, Mr. Stevens," she said, her voice a little firmer today. There was something in her demeanor that made me stop for a second. She wasn't as withdrawn. She was still quiet, but there was a small glimmer of something else. Maybe hope? "I got into a contest, Mr. Stevens," she said, holding up the envelope. I glanced up, momentarily distracted from my thoughts. "That's great, Emily," I said, not thinking much of it at first. I had too much on my mind, too many lesson plans to worry about. "What's the contest about again?" Her eyes lit up as she explained. "It's an international art competition. They said the winner's artwork will be featured in an exhibition." Now, that caught my attention. An international competition? My mind raced. Emily had never shown an interest in anything that big before. I hadn't even known she was thinking of entering something on such a scale. She had always kept her art close to her chest, so to speak, working on it quietly in the background. I tried to sound encouraging, but it was hard to hide my doubt. "Well, that's a big step, Emily," I said. "But are you sure it's the right competition for you? I mean, you really need to refine your style, especially to compete with some of the best artists out there." I watched as her smile faltered just a little, but she didn't let it disappear. Instead, she nodded, her voice steady yet soft. "I'll do my best," she said. I wished her good luck, but in my mind I couldn't see her making it very far. She was a talented student, but I couldn't imagine her winning in a competition of that caliber. Yet, there was something in the way she held herself that made me wonder. Maybe I had been wrong about her all along. Months passed after Emily's quiet announcement about the competition, and I almost forgot about it entirely. It wasn't that I didn't care, but life had a way of pulling me in 100 different directions. I still saw Emily, of course, but she had become more of a background presence in class. She wasn't bringing in any new sketches, and she wasn't drawing attention to herself in any way. I didn't give it much thought. I assumed the competition was just another one of those things that would fade away. Then one morning, as I sat at my desk grading papers, the principal's secretary walked in with a piece of paper. She handed it to me with a smile and left without saying a word. I glanced down at it. It was an email printout with the subject line, "International Art Competition, Winners Announced." I opened the email expecting to see the usual names, students from prestigious art schools, maybe some professional artists. But then, there it was, in black and white, Emily Green. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Emily? The quiet, reserved girl who had never once raised her hand to volunteer in class, the girl who had kept to herself, barely drawing any attention, she had won? I clicked on the link to view the winning piece, barely able to believe what I was seeing. And then I saw it. It was the same sketch, the one I had so carelessly critiqued months ago. The simple drawing of a woman. The one I had dismissed with a few words about proportions and childishness. But now, as I stared at it, I couldn't believe what had happened to it. The lines were more refined, the shading more dynamic. There was depth in the drawing, something I hadn't noticed before. The face, the expression, it was alive now. And the eyes, the very same ones I had once called too big, now held an incredible depth. They were no longer oversized. No, they were perfect. They conveyed so much emotion, so much history, as though the woman on the page had lived 1,000 lives. I sat there for a long moment, unable to breathe. I was stunned. What had once seemed like a childish sketch had transformed into a breathtaking masterpiece, full of life, raw energy, and truth. It wasn't just a drawing anymore. It was a reflection of everything Emily had gone through. Her struggles, her silence, her strength. It was all there, captured on that page. The guilt hit me like a tidal wave. How could I have been so blind? How could I have dismissed her work so carelessly? I had been so quick to criticize her, so sure that I knew what was best. I hadn't seen her potential, hadn't believed in her. And now here it was, the evidence of everything I had missed. I had failed her, and I knew it. The next day I could hardly focus. All I could think about was Emily's drawing, her victory. I couldn't get her face out of my mind. The way she had quietly walked away after I had critiqued her work, the look in her eyes that I had brushed off as nothing. I couldn't help but wonder how much she had been hurting in that moment, and how much of it had stayed with her, even as she went on to create something so beautiful. After class ended, I asked Emily to stay behind. My heart raced in my chest. I knew I had to apologize, but I wasn't sure how to start. I couldn't just walk up to her and say, "I'm sorry for being a jerk." It didn't feel like enough. "Emily," I began, my voice unsure, as I stepped closer to her. "I need to apologize for the way I treated your work before. I didn't understand it then. I didn't see what you were really doing with that piece, but your artwork, it's incredible. You've really proven me wrong, and I can see now just how much you've grown." I watched her face as I spoke, and for a moment I thought I saw the same flicker of hesitation that had been in her eyes months ago. But this time, she didn't look hurt. She just looked different. Her eyes were bright, calm, even, and when she spoke, her voice was steady. "Thank you, Mr. Stevens," she said with a smile. "I guess I just needed to believe in myself more than anyone else did." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. I had been so focused on pushing her, on making her improve, that I hadn't realized she was already carrying this strength inside her, a quiet, powerful determination to prove herself, no matter what anyone else thought. I realized, in that moment, that Emily hadn't needed me to believe in her. She had already believed in herself, even when I hadn't. And that was the lesson I needed to learn. As she turned to leave, head held high, I watched her walk out of the classroom, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. There she was, this quiet, reserved student, walking with a confidence that had been there all along, even if I hadn't seen it. I had witnessed something beautiful, something powerful. The quiet resilience of a student who refused to give up, even when others didn't believe in her. And I knew, deep down, that I would never forget the lesson she had taught me that day. It wasn't just about art or talent. It was about never underestimating someone's potential, no matter how quiet or unassuming they may seem. Because sometimes the quietest people have the strongest voices. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you liked it, please don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps out. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Feel free to share this with anyone who might enjoy it too. It really helps the channel grow and brings more amazing stories to life. Thanks for being part of this journey, and I can't wait to share more with you soon.